Major League Rugby. It's been a while since I've watched any Major League Rugby, I'll be honest. It's been one that I have neglected pretty badly. But we're closing in on the end of the MLR season for 2021. The last time I remember watching MLR kind of actively was before the 2020 season was canned. Things have obviously changed a wee bit since then. Back when I was watching that season, I think it was the Seawolves and the Legion that were on top. Nola was playing for the Legion. Yeah, the Gilgronis I don't think were any good. They'd only just changed to become the Gilgronis. They used to be the Herd. And apparently now the Seawolves and the Legion aren't all that flash. The new boys on the block, the Giltinis, are the top dogs. I'd known that for a while. I've been loosely following the competition. The Giltinis seem to be the team to beat at the moment. ATL seem to be doing pretty well. But yeah, I did have a wee look at round 15. I only watched one of the games in full, which was Utah up against Houston. And I've had a wee squiz, which means a look at a glance at some of the highlights of the other games as well. So I'll go through them pretty quickly. I'm not sure how much value I'll add here, to be honest, but I've been neglecting the MLR, so let's get that conversation going. And you guys can tell me what I've been missing and what seems to have been a pretty entertaining season. I should say, since I watched last year, there's an app, which I don't remember them having last year. They may have, but if they didn't have it, if they did have it last year, I'm sure it's better because it's got team stats and some player stats, which I don't believe was a thing last year. So the production values seem to be a wee bit higher. And I'm not sure about in the States, but I know for most places outside the States, you can watch all the games live or on demand on the Rugby Network for free, which is phenomenal. So I was just like, there were some games on Sky here in New Zealand, like the Utah and Houston game was on Sky here live, which is why I watched it. But I could have watched any of the games on demand just by casting them from my phone, basically, with the Rugby Network app, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to have free rugby. In New Zealand, we're not used to having that. I should also say, I feel like there used to be more games on a Monday. Part of the reason I was able to follow 2020 more than 2021, or Monday my time, like they used to play more Sunday games, right? I used to often be at work, and I would just put the MLR on one of my screens on a Monday morning, because it would be like an afternoon game in the States, and there'd usually be two games on. I feel like there's few to none on a Sunday in the States. Am I right? Am I right? Or is that something I'm mistaken on? Anyway, I'll go through the games and you guys can let me know your thoughts as well. And by all means, do catch me up on what's been going on this season. The Arrows against Rooney, 31-24. Didn't watch that one in full. I did see the start of it, but it was like delayed, wasn't it? Because they were waiting for an ambulance. They were waiting for health and safety standby staff to be available. But they were not there for like the first, it was like half an hour late, which is a bit of a pity. It seems like it's a pretty tough season for the Arrows because they can't play at home with the pandemic, and apparently they've just lost a bunch of their players to the national team. So yeah, they lost 31-24, but that's not a bad result. I feel like if they've been having a pretty bad season at 4-10. They're well below 500. Rooney's actually doing pretty solid. Rooney are in a playoff position at the moment. So yeah, they seem to be doing quite well. Bastero was there last time I was watching these guys, but obviously that lineup has changed as well. Yeah, I did watch the highlights. It seemed to be pretty kind of end-to-end stuff, some really good tries, and as I said, a kind of changed lineup. So I think Toronto will probably take a little bit out of that. The fact that they're away from home for this extended period. They've lost a bunch of their guys. But in terms of the playoff race, Rooney will be pretty happy to have picked up the points in that one. The next game was the Free Jacks and Nola. That's probably the biggest game on the cards just looking at the table. I mean, because the Free Jacks are now 7-6. Nola's 8-4-1. If the Free Jacks had got that one, they may have been able to get right up close to Nola on the table, right? What would Nola have been on 38? They would have been pretty much equal with them. So that's a pretty important victory for Nola. I did watch the highlights. Bodine Waka kicked 9 points, took the Free Jacks out to a 9-0 lead, but then from like 44 minutes, it took the second half for Nola to get on the board. They got 17 unanswered points. So that's a pretty important one for them. They're still outside the playoffs, Nola, but they are knocking on the door. 42 points. They're third in the East. Rooney are on 46 points. So, yeah, they've both played 13 games. So it's going to be a tight one, but that was a pretty important one for Nola to get the win. And it looks like the Free Jacks made them really work for that one. So, yeah, that was probably, in terms of the consequences for the table, maybe the most important result of them all. The next game, the one I watched in full, was the Sabercats against Utah. I will say it's a proper rugby field, which is one thing you've got to like about watching Houston. There's, like some of the other games, there's lines for days, right? There's all different coloured lines. I don't know how the players kind of differentiate. I guess you get used to it. It was a bit of a re-shock to the system for me. Oh, yeah, that's right. They play on football pitches or other kinds of pitches. But this pitch is a specialist rugby ground, which is great to see. And with the Raptors out of the competition, I think, is it the only specialist rugby ground they play at? But yeah, either way, decent crowd for a team which was going into this game 2-11. Decent crowd for the Sabercats, to be honest. But those are some diehard fans watching this game. Utah, by all accounts, have been on a pretty bloody good run, and they are trying to put the pressure on the Giltinis, although the Giltinis still have a game in hand over the Warriors. But yeah, I think they said in the build-up that Utah have had a few kind of last-minute wins in recent weeks to keep their hot streak going. They did go 5-0 down when Dicky Dikalati. Interestingly, his stats name on the app is different. It's called like Tura Govala. The right winger, anyway, for Houston scored the first try of the game. They missed the conversion, though. The Warriors hit back through Whippy. And that was a nice long pass from the flanker Wilson to get the try for that one. The great offloads from Utah, to be honest. The hands in that one were really great in the build-up to make it 5 points apiece. They both missed the conversions. The ref in that game, he's built, man. He must be a former player. Sounds like a Kiwi from his accent. I'm sure I've seen him before, but he likes the gym. Clearly, interesting wording. Like one of the penalties he gave away, he gave against one of the guys. He was saying, "You're on your belly," and he was patting his belly as if to say. Most refs would say, "You're off your feet," like at the breakdown. You're on your belly. Either way, whatever point, the message gets across. It was just interesting. Houston had a yellow card when Lenartz, the lock, got put a shoulder in, and eventually that led to a penalty try, actually. It was a big scrum from Utah. They had advantage. It was kind of coming. So 12 points to 5 at halftime. Utah had more possession, more territory, so maybe coming. But they weren't really able to capitalize on the yellow card. They didn't score any points when they had a man up. And they had their own yellow card on like 59 minutes? Basca, the scrum half. I think it was for a cynical slapdown. I'm not really sure. But either way, it was a cynical one at the breakdown. Trying to kill the play for the Sabercats. But again, no points scored during the yellow cards. And neither side really able to capitalize with the man advantage. Some interesting errors, like one of them a flanker unbinding from the scrum too early. It's not a common one that you see. But there was one of the teams got Houston penalised for that one, which is kind of an unforced error. A few not straight lineouts. Utah struggling a little bit with that. There were some handbags, which is... Do you guys say handbags in the States? Pushing and shoving? I think in hockey they call it like a scrum. But then rugby, obviously, that's a different thing. Handbags is what we would call it, which is a bit of pushing and shoving after Houston won a penalty at the scrum, but then the penalty was reversed for the pushing and shoving. So again, a kind of an unforced one. 67 minutes, Cruz gets a try, quick recycle ball, good passing from the deck like to keep the ball alive for Utah. Basca, the guy who'd been yellow carded earlier with the wide pass, they missed the conversion, so it's 17-5. Why were the Houston guys' socks all different as well? Is that a common thing, or is that just for some special week? Like I know we do it over here sometimes to remember to honour the club teams the guys play for, but yeah, all the guys were wearing different socks. I can't say I've noticed it before. 75 minutes, Utah knock on over the line. The scrum resets were what we would definitely call a dog's breakfast. They were pretty messy, but the game seemed pretty hot. It was pretty humid, so maybe that was accounting for some of the errors. Some of the guys looked pretty tired. It's obviously pretty hard to be playing in Texas at that time of year, very warm weather. But the running rugby was good. Guys running out of their own 22, so kind of all action stuff at the death. Van Vuren went over for the bonus point try. They were cranking through the phases, Utah, so it finishes 24 points to 5. So in the scheme of things, very important. I think temporarily that put them above the Giltinis on the table. But the Giltinis would later revert things back to normal. But yeah, good win for Utah, and to get that bonus point at the end, pretty important. Next one, ATL. I mean, all these results kind of went according to the form, right? They're at 10-4. They beat DC, who are 4-8-1. 32 points to 12. I seem to remember that game was close for a while, but then ATL just kind of blew it away. Bautista Escura, the former Juarez man, was kind of just running the show for them. It's good to see the likes of him. I mean, Mike Teo was playing for Utah. He was having a pretty good game. He's always been bulky, but I feel like he's gotten even bulkier since the last time I saw him, to be fair. But anyway, so ATL continue their run. They're first in the East. San Diego went down 33-14 at home to the Gilgronis, who are 9-5. Not in the playoffs, but they're close. They're the other team, along with Nola, who's kind of in the hunt. Oh, that game was the one that was close up until the hour mark. And then they kind of ran away with it towards the end of the game. Hard to see their numbers on the back of their jerseys, I find, with the white. Same is true with the Giltinis. Kind of hard to see the numbers on the back of those jerseys. So maybe that's one that needs a rethink for next season. But they do look pretty slick. The white is pretty nice. And the last game, which I think was on Monday. Yes, that one was on a Monday for me. So I'm guessing Sunday in the States. 29-14, the Giltinis over the Seawolves. As I mentioned, the Seawolves aren't the team that won a couple of championships anymore. At 2-11, they're fifth in the West. LA are 11-2, first in the West on 55 points. They are by far and away the favourites for this one. They got some big names to be here. I mean, Gilgronis, you got like McCaffrey and whatnot from the Brumbies. But yeah, the Giltinis are pretty stacked with Aussies. They got Billy Meeks and San Diego had Bjorn Basson, which is pretty cool to see. So certainly some big names on a lot of the teams. But yeah, I watched the start of the Seawolves LA game. No DTH Van der Merwe this one, no Gitto, no Ashley Cooper. So it was a bit of a rotated side. But yeah, the Seawolves were 14-0 down relatively early. Alatimu went pretty close, got ankle tapped by Billy Meeks at one point. And then a few minutes later, they're down the other end of the field, 21-0. So they kind of did well. They were 26-0 down at one point to come back to make it 29-14 at the death. So the Seawolves guys, at least at home, gave their fans kind of something to cheer about. But yeah, as I mentioned, I only really got to see the one game at full. Some of the games partially, some of them just in highlights. I do welcome any advice catching up. Who've been the players to watch? Which teams have been struggling? What's happened to the Seawolves? What's happened to the Legion? Why are these teams well below 500? It looks like the teams are in the playoffs at the moment is Rooney, ATL, the Giltinis, and the Warriors, with the Gilgronis and Nola kind of the only teams who seem to be like, you know, third in the East is Nola and third in the West are the Gilgronis. Those are the only guys who are kind of in the hunt with a few rounds to go. But yeah, we'll see how things go. Seems there's a few teams on the bye next week. Your next round, San Diego's playing Seattle, which is what would have been the final last year, I guess, if it was not canned. But these two teams are in different positions from last year. New England against New York, that'll be good. Toronto against Old Glory, and LA against Nola. That's probably a big one for Nola. That's maybe the biggest one on the cards for the next round is Nola. Not going to be easy, but they could certainly use a win to give their playoff hopes just that, a wee bit of hope. But anyway, MLR. It's good to be back watching some MLR. I will endeavour. There's a ton of rugby on in July, but I'll try and watch some MLR. Maybe during the week. I'll watch it on demand because I got that access. So if you guys are keen to talk some MLR, I'm happy to talk about it as well. Yeah, I'd like to watch these teams a little bit more. I don't just know like the big name players. I'd like to get to know some of the guys who are, you know, putting their hands up for the Canadian and American national team, and there's some Uruguayan guys there as well, some Argentinians and whatnot. So yeah, and it's good to see the production value seem to be getting higher. That's really good. Like really, really pleased. You know, I love my stats, so pleased to see that there's more information available on the competition. Got the magnets set up. Thank you to my missus for helping me with those. I never had MLR magnets before, so we're all magnet it up. I'll need to get the Jackals if they come into the competition for next year. But anyway, we can cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, as I said, do fill me in, guys. I've missed a lot of MLR. Apparently, basically 14 weeks of it I've missed. Been very loosely following it, but not in any great detail. So do let me know what's been going on. The Gilgronis have come good. The Giltinis are a force. Seawolves and the Legion seem to have dropped a wee bit. The Free Jacks are doing not bad. They've got a above 500 record only just. But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.